Hello, everyone. This is Albert Alvarez, technology specialist with Citrix Systems. Um, in this section, we're going to be doing part two of our Symantec PKI integration with XenMobile. So what I'm going to show you now is how will you configure the NetScaler now and the XenMobile device manager and app controller in order for leverage the certificate for user authentication um, for work something that being able to access the store and get the applications. Right. So first thing we need to do, we need to go back into the Symantec PKI manager page, and we're actually going to go into manage CAs, and we're going to download the root certificate. Just download, save it. I already have this downloaded, but I just want to take you through the process. We'll download that. We're going to need that because we're going to be adding that on our NetScaler in order to validate the user certificate against the root CA, in order to provide access to the access gateway, NetScaler gateway virtual IP. So we're going to go now, we're going to go back into my NetScaler. I need to make sure that I have access to my app controller as well because we're going to be logging into. Uh, Log in here, administrator password 1. Let me log in. Cool. So we're actually gonna go into our device manager. So I have all this preset right now. All right. So next thing, once you're in NetScaler, next thing we're gonna do, you're gonna log into the configuration ADC, and the first thing we're gonna do, we're actually gonna go into the SSL on the traffic management. We're gonna go to SSL. We're gonna open that up. And under certificate, we actually going to install the certificate. I'm going to go through the process. I already have the certificate there, but we're going to redo this just for everyone's benefit. So we could call this Symantec. I'll call it 2, since it's already there. All right, so back on the NetScaler, we're going to give a name to the certificate. We attend to it's already there, but we're going to go through the process. So basically, we're going to use DER format because that's how it was created. The base64 I downloaded from the BR format. I'm sorry, downloaded from the Symantec site. That's the format that it comes on. So you have an option to browse. You guys can see here I could browse the appliance or browse local on my computer. Just for the purposes, I'm gonna browse local. You see that I have my CA public underscore key number 4 got downloaded multiple times. Basically, we'll hit open, and that will allow you to create all of those. It's telling me it's already there, like I mentioned. Now, the next thing you do now, once you go into, it's already installed, and the certificate will show here. You can see the certificate. You can actually expand it. You can see some of the parameters and serial number and so on. Who the issuer, the validation time, and all that stuff. The next thing we're going to do, we're actually going to go into my virtual server. I'm going to open up, I got my NetScaler gateway here. It takes a minute with Java to kick in. All right, so the thing you want to do is, in this case, I'm doing certificate authentication only. I'm going to do a part number 3 on this video. So when I'm going to integrate Send App and Send Desktop, so we'll have to have like domain plus certificate. We'll get into that in another video. So you're going to certificates. You see that we are at the Symantec CA will display. So what I did here, I'm going to remove it so you guys can see the process. What I did here, I just add this as CA, a certificate authority, and then actually just for this demo purposes, I could just gonna use OCSP optional for now. We can, you can enforce certificate verification list if you want to, or whatever the use case is. For right now, we're gonna leave it as optional. Next thing you do is you're gonna go into certificate parameters, and I want my certificate to be mandatory. There's some use cases when you can make it optional in case you have like multiple level authentication using the same VIP and the user don't have the certificate. you don't want to enforce it, but for this use case, I do want to enforce my certificate. So I send it out to mandatory, hitting OK. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to enable certificate authentication on the virtual IP or the Netscaler Gateway VIP. So we go into authentication now. The next thing we knew is we need to have an authentication policy. You guys can see here. I'm going to show you the policy. The policy basically is NS true value, meaning the certificate is present or there's a certificate applied these configurations. When the configuration, we just telling them to look for assigned user subject alternative name, principal name, which is equivalent to UPN. Not using any of the group name field or default authentication group, we're just doing that. Said that, this is bind to the under the policies for authentication. Hit OK. So we shouldn't have to do anything else on the Netscaler. Now, the next thing we want to do is we actually want to go into the app controller. In the app controller, you want to see the under deployment. You actually want to make sure that this is set up to certificates. Now, one thing to know is like when you're using certificate authentication, by default, we cannot use a callback. There's ways around. There's some documentations that anyone's interested, I could probably configure that in a different video or provide the documentation. But the certificate authentication on the Netscaler it won't be able to use the callback because it will break that communication back of the certificate. We're going to try to interfere in that traffic. So there's an optional way where we can do it, but for these purposes, we just not going to use the callback. So 8.6 we support not having to enforce the request for callback verification. So one thing you want to do, you want to set up a certificate, and you're going to see that once you enable a certificate, it's going to check this here that says do not require password. As we are using certificate authentication, we're not expecting the password to be passed. We will use the certificate to validate the user authentication, and it'll pass the UPN to the app controller. So we're going to set it up to certificates, do not require password, set as default. We're going to save this. Now, one thing you need to know is that once you change the authentication request or mechanism on the app controller, you will have to re-enroll the device. Just because by enabling certificate authentication now, that certificate gets pushed to the device, and I'll show you how that looks like open enrollment. So let's say you had this set up to domain authentication, you change out the certificate, make sure that you re-enroll the device. And even better, if you can reinstall the work zone, that'll probably even be a better option, but at the minimum, you will have to re-enroll. Now, this is how you will configure this in the app controller. I'm going to go back to device manager. You're going to see now under options, app controller, since we have PKI integration, we now have this additional option on 8.6 where you can check this, deliver user certificate for authentication. And we're actually going to select the entity we use, which was Symantec. And what this will do is this will trigger a call from the app controller to say, I'm using certificate authentication, and when I'm enrolling the device, push that certificate to work some keychain. That way we have a certificate that could be then be used for authentication. I'm going to close here. The thing we want to see if what I was referring to is the reason why you have to change that once the device is enrolled, you will have to re-enroll the device in case you want to change to certificate authentication, for example. If you can see here, it's a very easy way to look into it. You can actually, you see that once the device enroll, it's going to look for an option that says AG client credential, request credential, and then it's going to pass those credentials. This is when it's going to see the certificate authentication to enable. The integration is enabled. It's going to request that and then push the certificate to the keychain. Again, this is completely different than what we saw yesterday on pushing certificates to the device keychain. This is strictly inside WorkZone, that a certificate gets put into the key change of the worksome itself, and the only way to do this is with integration between App Controller and XenMobile Device Manager. This is Citrix proprietary only. You cannot put a certificate for worksome authentication into the keychain any other way without other than using the MDM integration. Right. So once you have that configured, basically we can just go now into what I'm going to do is I'm going to select wipe this device, which is my device. Select wipe. I'm going to re-enroll it, and we're going to go through the process. So we back on my iPad. We're going to enroll. Oops. So we're going to enroll. By the way, I did just notice that I changed it to UPN since we used no certificate. Install the certificates. Profile. And if everything's working properly, what we should see here is authentication passing. Should get a pin prompt for a pin since we protected a certificate with a pin, works pin. There it goes. So we gave it our pin number. It's actually protecting a certificate and the keychain with a pin. And we get access to all obligations. There it goes. Get subscribe, works mail. Should get push in a second. Works web. Podio. Now, one thing I want to show, if we go now, there it goes. There's my applications getting installed. So I want to show you guys, if I go back now to, for example, if I go back now to my NetScaler, and we want to look, actually let's look at the active users. You see that I am connected to an NetScaler. So if I go here, for example, and kill this session, right? Since I have a passcode already, when I go back into the store, I should get prompt. Oh, okay. So reconnected, the certificate's there. All right, hold on. So if I should go back over here. Got the pin number, there he goes. The pin number should authenticate me back. Connect me to the store. There it goes. So if I go back over here now, let's say I do this, right? And let's go over here, and I want to go ahead and kill the connections. Terminate. So let's say if I go here now, log off here, and let's say if I remove the certificate, right? Save it, refresh the config, save it, save the next config. So now if I go back and try to get to the store, give me a second, it's just, I need to sign off. So let's see now. All right, nice. Okay, so that's not what I wanted to see. because the session is still open. Let's see. Right, I took out the certificate. We have certificate mandatory. All right, cool. So now, hit OK. Expect to see. Let's see, let's start Shores Home. Here he goes.